it enhances, or what we saw so far, it enhances the generation of dynamic content, starting from the database management systems, actually DBMSs and backstores. ASP technology itself, it can enhance the generation and the creation of dynamic content. Chapter number 6, actually, it is tackling the topic AJAX, asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. It is one of the very successful technologies, not related to ASP only, ASP solutions only, but related to all the web technologies. It enhances truly the dynamic content to be explored, to be utilized, to be implemented based on the usage of the JavaScript, XML, and the interoperability of both XML and JavaScript. Actually, it would be integrated within the page in question, whether it is an ASPX page or it is an HTML page or whatever the technology used to generate a web solution. So it is not to generate a standalone interface. It is not to generate a standalone page or web page using the AJAX. No, but we are going to generate a solution that would be integrated inside from within the web page, here in our context, the ASPX page. AJAX, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. The context of the asynchronous here, it is to enhance the workflow in an asynchronous mode. Means does not need submissions and resubmissions again and again in order to terminate the execution of the content. No, but we can actually get a response and get an output from within a small part inside the ASPX page. So based on the requirement, there will be an asynchronous or asynchronous content to be updated. Not needed, does not need the full page to be reloaded again. No. And from there only we are using, or the name is using the description asynchronous. The first definition to be given to the AJAX, the abbreviation or shortcut is asynchronous JavaScript and XML. As I said, it is a combination of the work of both the JavaScript and the XML. Here, for the purpose of accomplishing a solution or accomplishing a task, a function, procedure, to do work from within a web page, it is not to, it does not need by force a full page to be reloaded, or let's say it does not need to generate a standalone page to fulfill the requirement. The asynchronous usage here of the data, it is meant by on real plane we can talk about a combo box, for example, to be filled dynamically according to the request of a user without reloading the page. You choose the author, for example, of a book. A list of the books would be displayed immediately and automatically in a box inside the page. You change the author, the list of the books changes also automatically without reloading the page. This is an asynchronous data transfer. The data here to be transferred in between where the user is using, means where, as per the example we took here, the authors, the browser, and the service provider, which is a server, the web server. because whenever we ask a user to submit a request, so the request would be submitted to the service provider, to the web server. Yes, so the same scenario here. Yeah, the AJAX would enhance the submission of requests to the web server, but in an asynchronous mode. Means here we do not need a realistic submission from the user to be done. Means the user does not need to click a button, for example, an event handler, to launch the request. No. So based on the options or the preferences of the user, whatever the user selects or whatever the user highlights, there will be an update. Might be the full page. Might be, yes, the full page to be updated. Yes, it can be. But usually AJAX is not used to update a full page, to reload a page. It's not for that purpose. It is only for updating and reloading small parts and components, web components from within a web page. From within the web page. When we talk about the AJAX to be utilized from within an ASPX solution, there are libraries that they do enhance the function of this AJAX. What the AJAX do, there are libraries that they store the predefined methods that the AJAX uses to accomplish his tasks. AJAX on top of an ASPX page, so we are talking about an AJAX to run on a Microsoft product. So the libraries, they are built in DLL, they are 100% compatible. The libraries, which are DLL files, they are 100% compatible with our solution, since the web solution is an ASPX solution. ASPX is Microsoft based. All the components, they are Microsoft based. So the framework fully is a Microsoft. Thus, predefined methods AJAX understands or uses to accomplish its tasks, they are stored in a DLL library, we may say. Thus, it is explainable here, we can understand, and 100% it is compatible. Efficiency and efficacy would be actually seen effectively in action. Or what the DLL files would have, they would be actually seen working without any issue from within an ASPX solution whenever needed. So in conclusion here, AJAX, they are, now we can understand that the AJAX is a group of predefined methods we are going to accomplish and to use and to, let's say, deploy from within our solution. Those predefined methods, they are stored in a library, which is a DLL library, AJAX control toolkit, which is to be integrated from within the toolbox, the toolbox in our IDE, which is the Visual Studio. So we have enough actually understanding now what does the AJAX do and what is it as an object, what this AJAX do. Generally, actually, we talk about life workflow. When we talked about the types of the data binding and the types of connectivities, the direct and the indirect, the repeated and the single data binding, and all the features we saw regarding the round trips that happens in between the client, which is the browser, and the server, which is the web server or the web service. They have to be done in a live time immediately, without delay. This is one of the features the AJAX enhances. The AJAX works mainly on the client side, not on the server side. The AJAX is to render content on the client side. Means to make the thing be readable, render on the client side, not on the server side. So things not to be rendered on the server side, things to be rendered only on the client side. Refer to the life cycle of a web page. The render, and what is it? So chapter number 1, to render. So it renders the content, but in the client side. It means on the browser, not on this web server. The AJAX has the capability to instantiate the objects from within the client side also. Objects like text boxes, let's say hidden fields, submitted variables, things like that. So to instantiate components on the client side also. And those components, they are the things to be utilized to accomplish the task the AJAX is willing to do. Examples of components are very simple and very famously used with AJAX is the list box or combo box. List text box or combo box is a very famous component, web component to be utilized with the AJAX. Or global variables, submitted variables. Or we may talk about text field 7. So there is no limitation, but components that they need to be actually populated or used to populate data in a lifetime. So AJAX can be actually utilized to instantiate those components for the purpose of, yes, finishing the population process. It matches paradigms and patterns defined by, let's say, primordial components, and mainly we talk about JavaScript patterns. If the JavaScript is utilized in arrays, for example, if the web solution uses the JavaScript, standalone JavaScript, and the JavaScript is using certain patterns, for example, an array, the AJAX would respect that pattern and would understand the pattern utilized by the JavaScript and we would use it effectively without any issue. So observe the pattern defined in prior. Here we talk about, for example, here it is given the JavaScript objects. And as an example, I given you the arrays, but not only. So it respects the primordial, the priorly defined patterns. Priorly defined patterns of paradigms. AJAX can help in accomplishing the binding process. To bind, we need a layer. Either we talk about the single binding or the repeated value binding. In all cases, there is a layer that comes in between. Even the Adobe.NET layer can be actually the work of the functionalities that the Adobe.NET do provide can be accomplished or utilized, or let's say invoked from within an AJAX solution. From within an AJAX solution. It is to render when you said that it would render the content, so it is to visualize. It is to visualize the content. So it is to deliver the content into the front interface, front end interface. So yes, It would be utilized to just visualize data in front-end interfaces. True. Features. Now we talk about the advantages. Why we may think about using AJAX at the time that we can generate simple form and we do submissions only, simply. Why we may think about using AJAX instead of using a web created a web solution without the AJAX. What is the advantage? What is the enhancement we will see, or the developers will see, or the users will experience when the AJAX is used? AJAX, when we say that it works with portions and components, standalone components from within a web page, for sure it will save memory usage. And thus, it will minimize the bandwidth utilization. And by this, actually, there will be a comparatively and a noticeable time reduction when processing the requests using the AJAX. I give you the example. The EduWave, actually during our EduWave in our university, during the registration period, all the users, they use the same resources, the same pages, courses, student timetables, student profiles, all the very few pages, the same resources are to be used by everybody. Whom the everybody? Students, instructors, administrators, technical people, at the same time. And those requests, they are thousands and thousands. Because of this only, we see that the EduWave as a system is experiencing a load, and it is slow, very slow even. And you can see that during that period. One of the solutions, one of the problems, first of all, because the processing of the request at the same time needs enough memory to execute and to process all the requests at the same time. So because of this, the memory is not enough for everybody at the same time. The everybody means thousands and thousands and thousands of requests. The memory is not enough. And because of this, the bandwidth is utilized more and more. And this is a reason to cause the latency, the time latency, to see the wave very slow. One of the solutions to enhance this behavior is to implement the same solutions but using the AJAX, not only ASPX. EduWave is built in ASPX. So if the developers would refer to the AJAX, for sure the latency will be reduced. Why? Because the memory will not be utilized for submitting the full pages and the full requests. No, it would be updating portions. It would be updating initialized, let's say, here it is, initialized, instantiated variables and, let's say, components from within the page. Whatever the component is the component utilized to deliver a service, only that component would be instantiated, initialized, let's say, yes, and utilized for other process to accomplish the task. So thus, the memory will not, the size of the memory will be reduced, and the quantity of the memory required will be much more less when we compare to submitting the full page at the same time. And thus the bandwidth will be reduced, the bandwidth utilization will be reduced. And this way, we will see a very noticeable amelioration of the work of the EduWave. So this is an advantage that the AJAX imposes. When we said that components to be initialized and instantiated and things like that, so we talk about partial parts of the page, not the full page. And All of this will lead to a faster response. Means time response is much more less. The application will be very fast comparatively when we implement the same solution without AJAX. So time usage is much more less. Latency will be reduced. Latency will be reduced. The user experience would be actually much more fruitful. The user would be much more comfortable when using the solution that has the AJAX in it. So much more ameliorated interfaces, front-end interfaces. So because there will be indicators and hints to facilitate the use of the components and use of the, let's say, the solutions delivered. Features and different features will be actually controlled much more using the AJAX, like the autocomplete. Means fields to let's say to fill from within a long form. The AJAX can help the users to have them auto-completed. This is due to what? This is due to the implementation of the AJAX functions. So all of those, they are features. Sorry, they are features, yes, but they are advantages to push the developers to think of using the AJAX to accomplish the implementation of their own web solution. Any questions here, please, before we continue? Any questions, please? No questions, so everything is clear. Great. These advantages of not only positive sides we see due to the implementation of the AJAX, but there are drawbacks behind the use of the AJAX. If you implement a solution using the AJAX, there are negative points. Is that one of the very famous issues is that if a client is disabling fully the JavaScript from being utilized in his browser, so the AJAX won't work. If the customer or the client is disabling the use of the JavaScript in his browser, so the AJAX solution will not work. Yes, because it is built on the use of the JavaScript, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Functions using the JavaScript, if the JavaScript is disabled, will be cancelled, will not work. Actually, the content of the AJAX or the solution of the AJAX is user-friendly, so it will not. It is not something strange. No, you see something that you can understand clearly in the interface at the end of the day. But it imposes a serious issue if technologies like the JavaScript and the XML is not respected. So the AJAX won't work also as well. The AJAX is not a technology, a bulk of technology, or just a feature to be either activated or disabled by itself. No, remember that it is a combination of the JavaScript usage and the XML. So JavaScript, XML, they are technologies to be enabled at the front-end interface. And the solution, and the client's solution, let's say, in the client's browser, customer's client. The client here meant is the browser. And due to security measures, JavaScript functions needs to be disabled or controlled at least. So not everything to be allowed from the JavaScript, because JavaScript may be an entry point to the OS, and thus it has to be secured, controlled for security reasons. AJAX might cause issues because the AJAX uses the JavaScript, and the JavaScript, the XML even, they might open points to the operating system from within the browser. So this is a disadvantage. This is a disadvantage. If it relates an external JavaScript file or an external XML file to be loaded during the runtime, this is an enormous disaster that has to be controlled fully. This is a security issue. The runtime file to be loaded means it's a hole. It's a hole in the fence. The context of debugging the AJAX is not something that you'll find it easy with a click, with a click of a button. No, it actually it needs specific features and specific platforms, specific framework to succeed in doing so. Full stop. Because we can create a desk application. We can create a desk application using the AJAX. Debugging is for those kind of applications, not for the web www solutions, because www solutions, they are to be interpreted, not debugged. We debug www solutions? No, false. We interpret www solutions? Yes, true. It minimizes, yes, the advantages of the JavaScript. If we come back, it minimizes the use of the bandwidth, yes, absolutely. But at the same time, it increases the number of the requests. So since there is a space in the bandwidth and the memory where to process the requests, still there is a space. So more requests can be acquired. So it increases the number of the requests. This is a disadvantage also at the same time. The solutions actually built on top of the use of the AJAX, actually it is not trustworthy based on the connectivity you have. So the AJAX might fail in delivering results in some cases, in some scenarios where the connectivity, the physical connectivity is not trustworthy. Means if you do have actually a weak connectivity to the public network or to the resource where it is, where the backend solution is, the results of the AJAX might be not trustworthy. So it counts on the physical connectivity you have. It counts on the physical connectivity you have to do its job. This is the disadvantage. And one of the very famous issues, also the disadvantages, is that it does not show a back step, which is the button in your browser. If you click the back button in your browser and you have only AJAX functions, there will be no back. The browser will not see the AJAX works when you do back, when the user clicks the back button. So the back button in the browser, it is not to be, actually it's not, but it does not see the work and the effect set by the AJAX. Disadvantages means here you have to remember that the AJAX is a technology to enhance the delivery of dynamic content. Yes, absolutely. Yet disadvantages, see here we are less than 7 disadvantages. They are not account, but this is the major disadvantages that developers as well as the users, the consumers, both do face whenever a solution is delivered on top of the use of the AJAX. If you have any questions, you raise them here, please now. Great, great. So a small comparison between these AJAX solutions based and the JavaScript solutions based. At the end of the day, we are just using technologies to deliver web solutions, regardless being dynamic or not. But they have to be actually dynamic once we talk about the interactive, at least interactive, when we talk about the AJAX usage and even the JavaScript, because they are, as per the first definition of the JavaScript, they are to add interactivity to the front-end interfaces. Comparison between both the AJAX and the JavaScript here. For first primordial step, the JavaScript actually, when it delivers requests to the server, yes, it can help in doing so. But once it delivers a request from the client side to the web server, it has to wait for the response. It has to wait for the response. Absolutely. Because it is a one-way passerelle or gateway, or let's say channel, logical path, circuit. It takes requests, it brings back responses. If it does not, actually the solution does not respect this behavior, there will be misconfiguration and let's say display of contents. The application will not be reliable. This is when we implement the thing based on the JavaScript only. When we see the same solution implemented using the AJAX, AJAX submits the request but does not wait for the response, does not wait for the responses, because it has its capability to perform other tasks in parallel at the same time, because the response has to come immediately. Regardless being coming immediately or not, AJAX does not wait for the responses, and it has the capability to do tasks in parallel. So multitask, tunneling, or let's say pipeline, something like that. And this is an amelioration of the JavaScript, which the JavaScript does not have this capability, this potential. The JavaScript actually wants to submit the request. There have to be actually a control. There have to be a control on the components, how to display, to populate the data after the response is submitted. After getting the response, the JavaScript have to do a control on the components to display or to download the data. AJAX, no. AJAX does not need, here actually amongst the controls to do is the refresh. Amongst the controls to do using the JavaScript is the refresh of the page. AJAX does not need refreshing the page. Does not need. It's only the component concerned with the update or whatever, to be updated, to be utilized, to be controlled by the AJAX. So much more faster, less controlled. Much more faster, less controlled. Comparing the AJAX to the JavaScript. And because of those features only, the AJAX will minimize the overload of the web server. Or the requests have to be seen in queue when we talk about the JavaScript. So AJAX actually it minimizes the overload of the server because requests are to be submitted needs to be executed once only, one time only. Okay, thank you for following. If you hear your name, just say yes, please.